Oh, hello, everybody. Welcome in. It's Christmas Day. Come on. No, 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 no. I wouldn't. I won't hear of it. I won't hear of it. Come on in. Come on. Sit yourself down. You've joined me for a couple of story times already this month. Well, how about one final one for Christmas Day? You've joined me while I'm a bit hungover in terms of Christmas. I am chocolatey wasted. I'm full of pudding and turkey and all different types of meats and stuffing and veg and potatoes and little pigs in blankets and Yorkie puddies and little roasties and all this kind of lovely stuff. So I'm hungover with food at the moment. So I do apologise there, but I hope you've all had an absolutely wonderful Christmas day and that you've all been spoilt with gifts and all kinds of lovely things. And I do appreciate you for joining me today and making me part of your celebration. So by all means, come on in, get yourself warm, get yourself sat down. What is that? You want to hear another story? Well, I think I have one more in me this year. What have we done so far? So we've done Violet Night, we've done Santa, which is more like a Die Hard sort of Christmas setting. We have done Miracle on 34th Street, which was brilliant. Absolutely one of my favourite Christmas movies of all time. And I feel like people agree with me that Richard Attenborough is the best rendition of Santa put to screen ever. And what else did we do? Oh, yes, we did A Christmas Carol with Jim Carrey. A wonderful story about the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future, and about change and becoming a better person. But also, it's a fantastic time travel story. So, what story should I tell today? What should be my tale of Christmas Day? Well, I feel like the best tale is a tale that's very long and is known for being a very long movie, but also a very beautiful movie. And it's also a movie that I've actually only watched once. And I watched it for the first time last year, only because after years and years and years of saying that I'm going to watch it, and finally somebody at work reminded me, sent me a message on the day saying it's going to be on at 2 o'clock today on ITV4. You have no excuse to miss it. So I spent the whole day watching it. I feel like it's one of those films where like I have to talk about it. So I feel like the story that I'm going to tell today is the 1946 Christmas black and white classic, It's a Wonderful Life. So sit down as I tell you the story of George Bailey and how he touched so many lives in his town, and he realized that the world is better with him and the world is better with people like George Bailey. So get yourself comfortable, get yourself sat down, and let's get into it, shall we? So, first of all, for the final time for this Christmas season before the new year, I want to do a bit of housekeeping because you're all here and you're all comfortable and you've made me part of your Christmas. So I'm going to get this out of the way very, very quickly. So make sure, finally, that you follow me on Twitter, HowdyBeans_pod. If you listen to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to leave me a follow and to rate the podcast and to leave a comment down below. Also, you can add me on TikTok. Just type in the Howdy Beans podcast and you can find me there. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at A Wonderful Life today. I have really, even though I only watched it for the first time last year, this is one of those movies that has always haunted me, because it's one of those Christmas classics, and obviously being a movie fan, it's one of those that I've been wanting to watch for years. I've wanted to look into it for years. But again, because this movie is like 3 hours long, it's finding the time to sit down and watch it. Even at Christmas, there is so much to do at Christmas. And even on Christmas Day, I know a lot of people that have the tradition that they watch this on Christmas Day. But not with my family. My family, like, we're always up and busy and we're watching different movies and we've got TV shows like Christmas specials and that we've got to watch, and so we never got round to it. So when I first got round to it last year for the first time, and I was in my room and I stayed there for 3 hours and I watched the whole thing. I went through so many emotions. It was such a roller coaster. I went through happiness, through joy, through that feeling of nostalgia. Because like I've said many times before on the podcast, I grew up watching a lot of black and white movies at my grandparents. So nostalgia for that, sort of reigniting my love for old movies and old cinema. The way they used to make films, the way the actors used to act, and the films used to be shot, and the angles, and as well the whole Christmas spirit, and then getting really, really emotional near to the end of the movie, crying my eyes out. I'd be like, oh my God, I've just been on like a 3-hour emotional roller coaster. Like, this is insane that it was able to keep me even with adverts as well, this wasn't because I watched it obviously on normal TV, so there's adverts in between. Even with adverts, the movie was still able to grip me and hold on to me to the end, and I was just a ball of emotion by the end of it. And I was just like, I can't. It's so sad. It's so wonderful. I love George Bailey. When I was just like such in tears, and I sent my friend a message afterwards, being like, "I'm so thank you for reminding me. This is one of the best Christmas movies I've ever seen in my life. Thank you." You know. And I say through tears, and it's one of those where it's like I've got to watch this film every year now. I've got to do it. I've got the bug, so I figured. I know it's a long movie, and it's probably going to possibly be a long episode, especially for Christmas. But I just wanted to talk about this film. I wanted to watch it again, to really have an excuse to watch it again, really. So that's why I'm looking at A Wonderful Life today, because it had such a profound impact on me that I just wanted to watch it again every Christmas. And again, I feel like it's an interesting film to watch for Christmas and to talk about, really. And when am I ever going to get another chance to properly sit down and delve into it? So that's my hope and plan for today. So as for the movie synopsis, for anybody who doesn't know the story of A Wonderful Life, it goes as follows. So It's a Wonderful Life follows George Bailey, a man who sacrifices his dreams to help others in his town of Bedford Falls. But on Christmas Eve, facing financial ruin and despair, he wishes he'd never been born. His guardian angel, Clarence, shows him a world where he never existed, revealing the profound impact of his seemingly ordinary life on his family, friends, and the entire community, ultimately leading George to appreciate his own value and find redemption. So that is the movie synopsis. As for the cast, the cast, unless you're a fan of old cinema, you probably will not know any of these people. But I'm just going to list through them anyway. So you've got James Stewart as George Bailey, an absolutely brilliant actor and real iconic voice. I couldn't even do an impression of his voice. I've tried many times and it doesn't work. But James Stewart, brilliant actor, does George Bailey. You've got Donna Reed as Mary Hatch. Leon Barrymore as Mr. Potter, Thomas Mitchell as Uncle Billy, Henry Travers as Clarence, Bella Bondi as Miss Bailey, Frank Phelan as Ernie, Ward Bond as Bert, Gloria Graham as Violet, and H.B. Warner as Mr. Gover. That is your cast. As for the movie production, so this is the funny one, and while I was doing my research and looking into the production of this film, it's kind of funny. I think I've jinxed myself because I've been saying for months, I think since Halloween, October, that every movie and topic that I pick, there is nothing in terms of production. Even this Christmas, of all the films I've looked into, even the modern film like Violet Night, there was hardly any production notes that I could find about the background, filming, anything like that. Like I had to scrimp and scrape for ages, right? And here's me thinking, I'll talk about A Wonderful Life and it'll be the same thing that I'd assume there'd be loads, but there isn't. Oh boy, was I wrong? Right. So there's pages and pages of background notes about this film. There is like about the background, the casting, the filming, everything really. It's just reams and reams and reams. And I was like, do I read it all? Do I not read it all? But then I think, well, this movie's long anyway, and I feel like if you listen to this podcast, you're more than likely going to be used to a long form format in terms of like A Wonderful Life. If you listen to this episode, this movie, if you're a fan of it, so I figured it will be all right. So I'm just going to get straight into it because it's going to take a while. So here it goes. The original story, The Greatest Gift, was written by Philip Van Doren Stern in November 1939. After it was rejected by several publishers, he had it printed as a 24-page pamphlet and mailed to 200 family members and friends for Christmas in 1943. The story became to the attention of either Cary Grant or RKO Production David Hampstead, who showed it to Grant's agent. In April 1944, RKO Pictures brought the rights to the story for $10,000, hoping to turn it into a vehicle for Grant. Dalton Trumbro and Clifford Oditz and Mac Connolly each worked on versions of the screenplay before RKO shelved the project. In Trumbro's draft, George Bailey is an idealistic politician who grows more cynical as the story progresses, then tries to end his life after losing an election. The angel shows him Bedford Falls not as it would be if he had never been born, but if he had gone into business instead of politics. Grant went on to make another Christmas movie staple, The Bishop's Wife, RKO Studios chief Charles Corner urged Frank Capra to read The Greatest Gift. Capra's new production company, Liberty Films, had a 9-film distribution agreement with RKO. Capra immediately saw its potential and wanted it for his first Hollywood film after making documentaries and training films during the war. RKO sold Capra the rights for $10,000 and threw in the 3 earlier scripts for free. However, Capra claimed the rights and the scripts cost him $50,000. Capra salvaged a few scenes from Odit's earlier screenplays and worked with writers Francis Goodrich and Albert Hackett, Joe Swirling, Michael Wilson, and Dorothy Parker brought in to polish the script on many drafts of the screenplay. It was not harmonious collaboration. Goodrich called Capra that horrid man and recalled he couldn't wait to get writing it himself. Her husband, Albert Hackett, said, "We told him what we were going to do, and he said, that sounds fine. We were trying to move the story along and work it out. And then somebody told us that Capra and Joe Swirling were working on it together. And that sort of took the guts out of it. Joe Swirling was a very close friend of ours, and when we heard he was doing this, we felt rather bad about it. We were getting near the end, and word came that Capra wanted to know how soon we'd be finished. So my wife said, we're finished right now. We quickly wrote out the last scene, and we never saw him again after that. He's a very arrogant son of a bitch." That's funny. Later, a dispute ensued over the writing credits. The final screenplay, renamed by Capra It's a Wonderful Life, was credited to Goodrich, Hackett, and Capra, with additional scenes by Joe Swirling. Capra said the screenwriters' attribution committee decided that Hackett and Goodrich and I should get the credit for the writing. Joe Swirling hasn't talked to me since. That was 5 years ago. Obviously, 5 years ago then. Some in Semarina Falls, New York, believe Capra was inspired to model Bedford Falls after the town following a visit in 1945. The town has an annual It's a Wonderful Life festival on the second weekend in December. On December the 10th, 2010, the It's a Wonderful Life Museum opened in Sancra Falls with Kaylin Grimes, who played Zuzu in the movie, cutting the ribbon. However, film historian Gian Basinger, curator of the Frank Capra Archives at Wellington University and author of It's a Wonderful Life's book, has said no evidence exists for Sancra Falls' claim. I have been through every piece of paper in Frank Capra's diaries, his archives, everything. There's no evidence of any sort whatsoever to support this. That doesn't mean it isn't true, but no one is ever going to prove it. Bannister said that Capra always described Bedford Falls as an every town. Philip Van Doren Stern said in a 1946 interview, incidentally, the movie takes place in Westchester County. Actually, the town I had in mind was Califon, New Jersey. I think that's all. It should be California, New Jersey, but it's spelled wrong here. Anyway, the historic Iron Bridge in Califon is similar to the bridge that George Bailey considered jumping from in the movie. So that is the background. As for casting, so this one's just as long, so I do apologise. In his autobiography, Capra recalled, of all actors' roles, I believe the most difficult is the role of a good Sam who doesn't know that he is a good Sam. I knew one man who could play it, James Stewart. I spoke to Lawrence Wasserman, the MCA agent who handled Jimmy, told him I wanted to tell Jimmy the story. Wasserman said Stewart would gladly play the part without hearing the story. Stewart and Capra had previously collaborated on You Can't Take It With You in 1938 and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington in 1939. Henry Fonda, Stewart's best friend, was also considered. Both actors had returned from the war with no employment prospects. Fonda, however, was cast in John Ford's My Darling Clementine in 1946, which was filmed at the same time that Capra shot It's a Wonderful Life. For 17 supporting roles in the film, Capra considered more than 170 established actors. Jean Arthur, Stewart's co-star in You Can't Take It With You and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, was first offered the role of Mary, but had recently dropped out of the Broadway show Born Yesterday from exhaustion shortly before its premiere. Capra next considered Olivia de Havilland, Martha Scott and Anne Dovak and Ginger Rogers before borrowing Donna Reed from MGM. Rogers turned it down because she considered it too bland. Well, that's kind of funny. In chapter 26 of her autobiography, Ginger, My Story, she questioned her decision by asking her readers, "Foolish, you say?" A little bit foolish, I would say, but it's all in the past, so we live and let live. Anyway, it goes on to say, a long list of actors was considered for the role of Potter, originally named Herbert Potter. Edward Arnold, Charles Bickford, Edgar Boroden, Lewis Calhern, Victor Joy, Raymond Messi, Thomas Mitchell, and Vincent Price. Leon Barrymore was eventually cast because he was as a famous Ebenezer Scrooge in radio dramatizations of A Christmas Carol. At the time, it always comes back to A Christmas Carol, doesn't it? And was a natural choice for the role. Barrymore has also worked with Capra and Stewart on Capra's 1938 Best Picture Oscar winner, You Can't Take It With You. I wonder if he is related to Drew Barrymore, because I would imagine so, because I know her dynasty is quite long, so I would imagine that's a high potentiality. But again, I won't know unless looking into it. But that's not what we're doing here today, so I'm going to move on. But potentially, let me know in the comments if he is or not. Anyway, so before Capra decided on Ward Bond as Bert, he also considered Sam Levy, Barton McLean, Robert Mitchum, John Alexander, and Irvin Bacon, great name for the role. Before Capra cast Thomas Mitchell as Uncle Billy, he also considered Walter Brennan and W.C. Fields for the role. And he also considered Jimmy the Raven for Uncle Billy's pet, appeared in You Can't Take It With You and You and each subsequent Capra film. As for the filming, so It's a Wonderful Life was shot at RKO Radio Pictures Studios in Culver City, California, and in 89-acre RKO Movie Ranch in Encino, where Bedford Falls was adapted from Oscar-winning sets originally designed by art director Max Rhee for the 1931 classic film Cameron, covering 4 acres. The town consisted of a main street stretching 300 yards, 3 city blocks, and 75 stores and buildings, and a residential neighborhood. Capra added a tree-lined center parkway built a working bank set and planted 20 full-grown oak trees. Pigeons, cats, and dogs were allowed to roam the mammoth set to give the town a lived-in feel. Due to the requirements of filming in an alternative reality, as well as different seasons, the exterior sets were extremely adaptable. RKO Studios' head of special effects, Russell Shearman, developed a new compound using water, soap flakes, foamite and sugar to create chemical snow for the film. Before then, movie snow was usually made from untoasted cornflakes, which were so loud when stepped on that dialogue had to be redubbed afterwards, or they just used asbestos. If you know the story of Wizard of Oz, you just know that when you watch that scene with all the snow, that's just asbestos, that is. So they're just like, it was a different time. We didn't know. We didn't know. That's all we can say, really. Anyway, so moving on. So filming started on April the 15th, 1946 and wrapped July the 27th, 1946, exactly on deadline for the 90-day principal photography schedule. Only 2 locations from the film survive. The first, a swimming pool that was unveiled during the high school dance sequence, is located in the gymnasium at Beverly Hills High School and is still in use as of December 2023. The second is the Martinet home in La Canada, Flint Ridge, California. RKO's movie ranch in Encino was razed in 1954. The scene where young George saves his brother Harry from drowning was different in an early draft of the script. The boys play ice hockey on the river, which is on Potter's property. As Potter watches with disdain, George shoots the puck, but it goes astray and breaks the no trespassing sign and lands in Potter's yard. Potter becomes irate and his gardener releases attack dogs, which causes the boys to flee. Harry falls in the ice and George saves him with the same results. In another draft, after the unsuccessfully attempts to consult his father about Mr. Grover and the pills, George considers asking Uncle Billy, but he is on the phone with the bank examiner. Billy lights his cigar and throws his match in the wastepaper basket. George turns to Tilly, who, along with Eustace, are his cousins, although not Billy's kids. But she is on the phone with her friend, Martha. She says, Potter's here. The bank's examiner's coming. It's a day of judgment. The wastepaper basket suddenly catches fire and Billy cries for help. Tilly runs in and puts the fire out with a pot of coffee. George decides to deal with Grover's situation by himself. According to Bobby Anderson, in the confrontation between Mr. Grover and young George, H.B. Warner, who was drunk at the time of the drugstore scene, slapped him for real and made his ear bleed, reducing him to tears. Warner hugged him after the scene was shot. Composer Dmitri Timokin had written Death Telegram and Grover's Deliverance for the drugstore sequence, but Capra elected to forgo music in those scenes. Timokin had worked on many of Capra's previous films, but those changes and others led to a falling out between the two men. Timokin felt as though his work was being seen as a mere suggestion. In his autobiography, Please Don't Hate Me, he called the incident an all-around scissors job. In the scene where Uncle Billy gets drunk at Harry and Ruth's welcome home newlyweds party and staggers away off camera, a crash is heard off screen. Mitchell, as Uncle Billy, yells, I'm all right, implying that Uncle Billy had knocked into some trash cans. A technician had actually knocked over some equipment. Capra left in Mitchell's impromptu ad-lib and rewarded the technician with $10 equal to $141 and 84 cents in 2021, thanking him for his sound improvement. According to rare stills that had been unearthed, several sequences were filmed but subsequently cut. Alternative endings were also considered. Capra's first script had Bailey's fall to his knees to recite the Lord's Prayer. The script also called for an opening scene with the townspeople in prayer, feeling that an overly religious tone undermined the emotional impact of the family and friends rushing to George's rescue. The closing scenes were rewritten. Capra found the film's original cinematographer, Victor Milner, slow and pretentious, and when Milner became ill, Capra borrowed Joseph Walker from Columbia. Walker had lensed 19 previous Capra films, but when Rosalind Russell demanded that Walker return to Columbia Pictures to shoot her next film, Walker trained veteran camera operator Joseph Biroc to be his replacement. Although working with three cinematographers was difficult for Capra, in Walker's opinion, it turned out very well because the scene each cinematographer shot was so different that they did not have to match each other's visual styles. And that's everything, really. I have to say, I know it's a very long one, but then, like I said, this is a very long film. But yeah, I absolutely love and adore this film. And just reading that behind the scenes stuff and learning more about it, it just takes you back to the old days of cinema, of how they used to shoot them and how they used to be shot and how like they built a whole town. You wouldn't see that nowadays, really. They would just use the Universal backlot, which is already a sort of a pre-built town. But that's what they would do nowadays. So you don't really hear about where they build whole towns. I think the last time I read about it, I think they did that for the Cat in the Hat, the movie, where they actually built the whole little town. Well, it's not town, but they built all the house in the suburbs with the houses, and then they redecorate the town. I actually believe the town still keeps a lot of the artwork and the paint that was done to the town. They kept it because they loved the look of it. So if you go to that little town where that movie was shot, it's still like that. And I like that little thing. But you don't hear about these things, like how they used to do it back in the old days when they used to make movies. It was like, look, we haven't got CGI, we haven't got technology. We either find somewhere that looks good, like in real life, or we build it. And that's that. And I love it. I think that's brilliant. I just miss old-fashioned cinema. That's so good. Anyway, I've already been talking for 24 minutes, so I'm going to go off now and watch It's a Wonderful Life. And when we come back, we're going to be full of tears, full of sadness, but it's going to be absolutely wonderful because I love this movie to bits. So I'll see you all in a second. And welcome back, everybody. So, firstly, before we get into the movie, I do want to apologise of how I sound. Since doing that introduction, I've come down with a head cold. Trust my luck to go through all of the working December period, and then to finally get to my last day on Friday the 19th, and to come down with a head cold. Just my luck. But I just wanted to apologise, just so you're wondering why the quality doesn't sound as good, or it sounds a bit sort of nasally. That is why. But it is winter, and this is the time of the year. Also, it's kind of my fault that it's kind of funny. So I did that introduction, and then I did a little bit of editing, and I went downstairs. And as soon as I get downstairs, what's Mum watching? She's watching It's a Wonderful Life. So I thought, well, okay, coincidental. I'll sit down. It gets to the part where George is with Mary, and he goes, "You want the moon, Mary? You say the word, and I'll throw a lasso around it." You know, that one. And I thought, oh, I've only really missed the beginning, and I watched the whole film. And then I thought, well, once the film ended, and it was a beautiful movie, I thought, oh, should I do my review? But no, I was like, no, it's a long film, and it's a classic, and I want to get it right, and I want to make sure I get all my thoughts properly collected. So I'm going to watch it another time. Problem is, I should have done it then, because now getting ill and having to watch the movie again, I'm a bit worried how this is going to come out. But fingers crossed, I was able to sort of pay attention and to kind of see the things I wanted to see and kind of get an idea of what's going on in this story. Because overall, first impressions is there is a huge, blatant, obvious reason as to why this is such a classic, because I'm going to use a quote that I don't like because I feel like it's overly used too much, but I feel like here it is a warranted use of this quote, and it makes sense for this movie. And that quote is simply, "They don't make them like they used to." And it's true. And it's not just because it's black and white. It's just the fact of they just don't make movies like this back anymore. Back in the day when they had no technology, everything had to be built. Having had to be organic, natural, raw, human emotion, human hands had to be, involved in making a movie back like this back then. And you just feel it. You feel the human side of it. You feel the emotion side of it. You feel, the life of George Bailey. You feel the life of Bedford Falls. You feel the life of everybody in this story, where you just watch it, and even though it's a black and white movie from the 40s, it doesn't matter how old the movie is. You watch it and you go, "This is brilliant." You're in sort of, you're in awe. You're enraptured. You're drawn in. It's kind of funny. Neil from the We Needed Rose podcast, he messaged me a day or two ago because he went to go see this in the cinema, and he made a comment. I won't say what it is online, but he made a funny comment about some people that were in the cinema with him at the time. And I said, "Oh, you might be surprised. They might, leave because they're not interested." And about an hour or two later, he gets back on. And he goes, "Oh, they behave themselves. They seem to really, really enjoy it." And he could hear crying and stuff like coming for them. And it just goes to show the fact of no matter how old you are, or no matter what your interests, if a film's good, it's good. Whether it's be color or it's in black and white. If a movie's good, it will always be a classic. It will always be good. And it's true here for It's a Wonderful Life. I've seen this movie now 3 times. Each time I'm crying at the end. Each time I'm sitting there like, "George, don't do that." Or I'm like, "Oh, God, I wish George would be able to just go off and travel, see the world like he wants to." But each time my heart's like, "Oh, fair play, George. You stick around and you want to help the people of your town." And it's lovely. It really, really is. And it reminds me of a quote. And it's a quote by Robin Williams. It's a very, very long quote, but I've managed to shorten it down to the most relevant part. And he goes like this. He goes, "One day you realize the thing that matters is others. Way beyond yourself. Self goes away. Ego, bye-bye. You realize there's a lot of amazing people to be thankful for and a loving God. Other than that, good luck. That's what life is about." And the idea behind that quote is that the servitude for others is what means the most. And it does at the end of the day. It's servitude to others. I obviously I keep my work life and my private life private, as most people should do. But for what I do for a living as a job is servitude for others. I get up every day and I'm in my area. I'm in the local community. I'm helping people. I'm trying to support people. I'm seeing people on the breadline. People struggle, and it's that idea of
it's not. It's not a high paying job. It's not the most prestigious job in the world. But I don't care because it's the service to others. It's helping others. People. I go to bed at night feeling better knowing that somebody is fed or somebody has got a roof over the head or is warm over the winter period. I've done my job. You know what I mean? And it's that idea of and that's what this movie tries to show is the fact of its service to others. It's that thing of humans are a wonderful creature. One of the most sort of startling sort of traits of humans is ego. And ego can be good and ego can be bad. And we've seen a lot of the way that ego can be really bad. But it's a thing of if one person can throw the self away and say, instead of going me, I, go them, they instead. It's a fact of like, how can it benefit me? Like, no, how can it benefit everybody else? If one person can do that, it's like a butterfly effect. It affects so many more people. And this story goes to show George Bailey, through this story, many, many times gives up college, gives up a life of traveling, gives up everything to help the people of his town. You know, and just because they're his friends, they're his family, they're his neighbors. You know, he just does it because that's the right thing to do. It is kind. It is nothing. He's not trying to prove himself to anybody or to show he's the better man or he's got the most money. It's the fact of, no, I just want to help people. And within doing so, he manages to help the whole town. So when he's in need, when he's struggling, they come to him at the end of the movie. And it's wonderful. And again, it's that thing of like, and again, we'll get into it when we talk about the story. There are many times where George goes, like, you can see it in his face, he doesn't realize the effect that he's had on so many people until Clarence shows him what life would be like if he wasn't born. And then at the end of the movie, when they all come to him and he realizes, all these people that helped just want to help, just give him money anywhere they can help, like put a roof over his head, that sort of thing. It's like, it's a wonderful thing. So it's that idea of servitude for others. You know, get rid of your ego. Not just at Christmas, all year round. You know, 2026 is around the corner. Get rid of that ego. Servitude for others, even if it's only little, even if it's like donating your time or donating money or, you know, going out and helping your neighbor. It doesn't matter what it is. Or if it's helping a stranger on the street, you see somebody come out the shop and they've got loads of bags in their hands and you just go over and you hold the door open for them. Or, you know, you see an old lady struggling and you want to help out or, you know, anything like that, you know, just that idea of you don't think, just do. You know, just don't think of how it's going to benefit me or if there's people watching or people recording it so you look like a hero. It's not about that. It's the fact of just helping others. And it's this movie, for me, embellishes that. It really shows that off. And I love it. I love it for that. I love it for the characters, the music, the idea. Like, even though it takes a big change at the end, it takes a big leap from going very sort of realistic to very Christmassy and angels and stuff like that. Even though it takes that turn at the end, it's still wonderful. You know, it really shows like it's a wonderful life. You know, George doesn't see it because he's in it, but it is a wonderful life, and we all live wonderful lives. Specifically, specifically as well, if we are there for others, if we have loads of friends, if we have a house over our heads, you know, if we have love of other people and stuff like that, that's wonderful. It is a wonderful life. It's beautiful, you know. So yeah, overall thoughts. Obviously, you know, you had to assume that I would love and enjoy this movie because obviously I would do. You know, not just from the introduction because it is just a wonderful film. You know, pardon the pun, but it's named correctly because it is. As for the story, so we'll get into sort of the story part of it. George Bailey is a brilliant character for many reasons. But we'll get onto George in a minute. I love how this movie starts. It starts fantastically and very in an odd way as well. Because the way the movie starts is it starts at the end. So it starts with all these people wishing, like praying to God, praying for their friend George Bailey, like my friend or my neighbor or George or whatever. Please look after him. Please help him. He needs you right now. And obviously, as an audience, we don't know. Again, if you haven't seen the film, we don't know as to why they're saying this. It's just somebody called George really needs help right now. So the gods or the angels, I think it's angels, hear this and they decide, well, we're going to help this guy George the best we can. We're going to get Clarence in because, you know, 200 years, he hasn't had his wings. He's innocent, but he sees the good in everything. So we're going to give him a chance to really help this George. But to do so, in order to help George, you need to first understand who George is as a person. And so, as I think Joseph or Gabriel says to Clarence, to understand somebody, you first need to go to the beginning to really understand who a person is. So sit down and listen. And then the story goes from there, really. You see George from a very young age, and his first act of just being a decent person is he saves his brother. He saves his younger brother, Harry, from drowning. Within doing so, he gets a really bad cold, because obviously back in those days, a cold or anything like that was like life-threatening. So luckily it didn't kill him, but it did manage. So he went deaf, and I think in his left or his right ear. But he lives a normal life, and he goes through life. And as you see George, you kind of realize, you see little things, you realize why he's such a good person. When he starts working as on the, I think, as a not a receptionist, what's it called? As a cashier in a sort of tobacconist sort of shop, because back in the day, I think it was a tobacconist shop. Back in the day, I think it was the tobacconist was your pharmacist, but also you could get drinks from there as well, and magazines. Basically there was one shop that did everything, and his boss is basically upset that his son's died. I think influenza. I think he killed him. And he goes in the back, and his boss goes to him, like, take these pills, put the subscription. This boy's dying, needs him like within an hour. But George, he's looking at it, he's like, I can't, because you've given poison capsules. So he goes to his dad. His dad's dealing with Mr. Potter, and as he's doing this, again, this is what I love about old movies, is that there's every single shot you see, because again, everything was done on film. Nothing was digital. Like nowadays, if you make a mistake on digital, it's okay because it's digital. You can just like rewind it, delete it, do it again. Back in the day, you was on film, so like you had to get it right. You couldn't waste film because it was too expensive. So everything you shot had, even if there were bloopers, and actors weren't sort of inevitable of not getting things wrong, infallible. I mean, but there was, because you had film, nothing was wasted. So every scene you see is important, and I love that about old film. So he runs to his dad. His dad's talking to Mr. Potter, and you quickly learn that Mr. Potter is basically the monopoly guy. Like all he cares about is money, and he's literally full ego. It's like, all I care is me, I. He's basically Scrooge, and he goes to his dad. His dad's busy. He's like, what do I do? And in the end, like George just decides, like, no, I can't. I can't do it. And he goes back to his boss, and his boss got a phone call off the guy's like, didn't have his medication. And obviously back in those days, again, I don't support it, but back in those days, anybody used to hit kids, he's hitting him, he's hitting him around his bad ear, his ear's bleeding. He's like, what did I tell you? That kid needs that medication. They could die without you. And the young, oh God, see, this bit made me cry when I first watched it. It still makes me feel uncomfortable now. But when I first watched it, I was in tears because I felt so sorry for this young actor. And I think there's a bit of trivia where the guy actually generally slapped him and hurt him. I don't know if his ear was bleeding was real or not. But I felt like it might be. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, so he's hitting him, and the young actor, like he's playing young George, he's like, no, I couldn't let you do it. Like, I know you're hurting, and I understand. Like, I couldn't let you. You didn't mean to. I'm not going to tell anybody. And then his boss realizes the capsules he would have given him would have been poison, and he would have killed that young poor kid. So young George's like, I would never tell a soul, I promise. And he never does. He never tells anybody. He grows up, never once uses it to blackmail his boss or nothing. Never tells him, just between them two. And at a young age, you can tell that George is a very sort of empathetic sort of person. He's like, no, I understand what you're going through, that you feel in pain because you've lost your son. It's not your fault. It's okay, And the story goes from there. There are many times where like George is going to go on his adventure, but then he can't because his father dies. So then he has to stay and help out with sorting out the business so that Mr. Potter doesn't take over. So then he tries to go to college and he can't go to college. So instead, like, he stays on and runs the firm, and his brother goes off to college and becomes a track star, and he's proud of his brother, but at the same stage he kind of envies his brother because his brother, but he's basically living the life that he wants to live. He's going off doing what he wants, but George is never allowed to do what he wants, or feels like he's never allowed to do what he wants. Every time he wants to do something, he can't. And you do feel for him. Like, I feel for George so much in this movie because the reason why this movie is so long is because it's a movie about a man's life. It's a movie about a person's life of all the sacrifices this person's made. And it just shows the fact of, yeah, he made sacrifice. Yes, he can't travel the world. He never gets to leave Bradford Falls. But it goes to show, if he leaves any times, he is the sort of the pillar of society of that town. And if he leaves, everything goes. Everybody wants to support him. Everybody loves him. Everybody wants to help him. The problem is the fact of he can't leave, because if he leaves, Mr. Potter takes over. But at the same stage, while he's there, he meets Mary again, and he starts his life up with her, and it's wonderful. And he has kids. He has little Zuzu, and all his friends. And yes, his brother's going off being a war hero, but George is at home doing his best, being like the home guard, being the warden, going on rubber runs, scrap runs, going to church, doing his best, being a warden, telling people to, like, put your lights out and that sort of thing, even though America was never bombed. Still, it could have happened. So it's one of these things. It's like, you feel, your heart breaks for him, but at the same stage, you're like, well, you are so important to this town. You just don't see it because you live there. But if you didn't live there and you were just visiting, you wouldn't realize it. And George doesn't realize because it's his life. And it goes to show, like, the end of the movie, where, like, he everything's gone to pot. Like, his Uncle Billy basically flummoxes it up, accidentally gives Potter like $8,000, I think it is, which again is a lot of money now, but back then that was a lot of money. Back then, I think just for inflation, that's upwards of like a couple 100,000 to probably $1 million. I don't know, but it's a lot of money. It was a lot of money back then. And completely, like, flummoxes up, gives it to Potter. Potter, being Potter, basically is tries to kind of blackmail, well, not blackmail, but sort of like, oh no, George, what's happened? Oh, this is a shame. And tries to use it to get George, and George is like trying to stand by his morals, and the police are after him and stuff like that. And it's sad, but, and then George sort of contemplates this idea of, like, my whole life I've never been able to do what I want, and it's been terrible, and he's completely blinded by everything. He's blinded to all his friends. He's blinded. He doesn't see Mary, doesn't see his kids. He doesn't see anything. He just the fact that that's it. My life's over. I've never been able to do what I want. That's it. And he decides suicide. But Clarence appears, and he jumps in to instead. And then George, being George, is like, whoa, I've got to save his life. So he jumps in instead and saves Clarence's life. And then see, Clarence has an angel with no wings, and he tries to show George of, like, how can I help you? And George at this point is like, well, life would have been better if I wasn't born. And Clarence is like, well, okay, your wish has been granted. He grants his wish, and then George sees the fact of, he goes to Martine's place, and it's not Martine's place, it's some other person's place. And his friend Martine's not there, and nobody knows him, and people hate him, like his old boss. He tries to talk to him, and everybody shuns him and pushes him out. And he's like, hey, that's, my old boss. And he's like, well, if you know him, he's been in the joint for 25 years for killing that young kid. So if you know him, you're obviously a bum and a crook as well. So I don't want you out. And he throws him out, and he kicks out. And then he goes down the street, and he finds out, like, Violet, I don't know if she's an exotic dancer, but, like, she's a dancer in a nightclub, and she's getting arrested, and the whole street has been Potterized because Potter's taken over. It's kind of funny, actually. Obviously, I know Back to the Future 2 comes after this, but as I watch this, I'm getting very sort of flashbacks to Back to the Future 2, where Marty goes back and Biff has taken over the town. And Hill Valley is like Biff County sort of thing. It's just like hookers and bikers and casinos and all that. It's all completely changed. And it's kind of the same here, really. It's maybe where they got the idea from. I'm not sure. But it's very much the same. Where he gets there, like, Potter is basically commercialized everything. Everything is just money, money, money. It's like, dance halls here and casinos there, and it's not Bedford Falls anymore. It's not home. It's like Potter has ruined it. really. And this is the problem. Like the world's full of these sort of people. Even now, it's not just back then. And it's it's just one of the things. Like many times, I watch this movie and I'm like, Potter, just die. When Potter dies, things will get better. George can have a proper life. Not that he doesn't have a life, but George can have a proper life and be safe to leave Bedford Falls when Potter dies. But as long as Potter's alive, everything in that town would just go to hell if George isn't there, which I find kind of funny. But yeah, he goes down and he realized life is different, and his kids weren't there, his house aren't there, he wasn't there. Like his younger brother died, like his younger brother fell through the ice, and because George wasn't there to save him, because George had never been born, his brother drowns. So he all those people that his brother saved, being a war hero from that ship, they all sank and died during the war. And like Mary doesn't recognize him either, doesn't know him. Mary becomes a sort of very sort of closed in, innocent sort of librarian. She doesn't really have sort of a life, and he terrifies and scares her, and she's like in fear of him. And obviously that's going to shake anybody, really. The fact of, oh, like my love of my life, she doesn't know me, doesn't recognize me. This is horrible. And there's one part in this, and it kills me every time, and it always gets me. This is a bit of trivia, but also it kind of really makes this ending scene even more powerful. Sort of, how to word it. So James Stewart, before he made this movie, he was in the war during World War II, and he was slowly coming back into acting during sort of after sort of the Second World War. He was dealing with PTSD. Now, at the time, I think it was called shell shocked, but we call it PTSD today. But back then, there was no real help or support. So James Stewart just went back into acting. And there's a scene where he's at the bar and he's praying to God, and he's saying, just I need help, I need this, and he's breaking down in crying. He's breaking down in tears when he's at the bar. He's at Martine's getting drunk. This is before he meets Clarence. And the reason that scene kills me more is the fact of he was dealing with PTSD at this time. And while he was crying, that was a real thing. Like he generally broke down. It wasn't in the scene for him to break down. He was generally crying and breaking down because his real true emotions of the war and everything that he'd been dealing with just came out in that scene. And it makes that scene, and I hate to say it because I'm basically saying I'm putting light and a positive spin on somebody's tragic sort of feelings and emotions, but it makes that scene ever more stronger and more powerful because of it, and it's a shame. Obviously, James Stewart, he's a brilliant actor, but it's a shame he had to go through what he had to go through, and we all had to go through during the war. I say we, but you know what I mean. Like as a culture, as a human race during the 30s and 40s. It's a shame we had to go through all that and then get into this and then to get into all that emotion, but it works for the scene, and it kills me more knowing the fact of what he's actually truly feeling is real during that scene. It is heart wrenching. It really, really is. But no, I love this film, and how it all ends, where like after he realizes like he wants to go back, like Clarence, like I'd take it back, like I understand what life is like, because he does see, he's like, he realized how much of a pillar he is. He realizes that if he didn't help these people, that they'd all be living in Pottersville in shacks, and he'd be like Scrooge, basically charging them so much rent and so much money they can kind of barely afford to live. And there's no such thing as Baileysville or Baileytown because it was never built. So it became Pottersville instead. All these people that he helped end up going to prison or dying or sort of nothing. It's like all the worst things sort of happened to them. So he realizes like, no, I do have a wonderful life. I do. I've got my kids and my family. Like, yeah, I didn't get to travel the world, but you know what? I have what I need here. I don't need to see the world because my world is here in Bradford Falls with these people, with my family, with Mary. That's all I need in my life. I don't need to see the world because the world is here, and that's what matters. And it's that idea of, it's my favorite quote, and I use it all the time. It's that idea of think global, act local. And what that quote basically means is the fact of, if you want to change the world locally first. So think globally. Think the changes that you're making are going to affect the world eventually. But right now, think, how can I change my local area? And again, it comes back to that thing of service to others. Help your neighbor. Help somebody in need. If you see somebody struggling, offer your services. Donate food, um, clothing, anything, warmth, time, money, effort. Whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. You know, if you work locally, things will get better. You just got to work from the local period, and the better things are locally, it's like a butterfly effect. Things will get better. People will be happier. People will also want to help others and stuff like that. And so that's what George did, really, is the fact of, he thought globally. He wanted to travel the world and see everything, and uh, be an explorer. And sadly, he didn't get to do that, but he kept it local to Bradford Falls, to his area. And by the end of the movie, when he really, really needed it, when he was really struggling, the whole town came to his aid, came to support him. It was like, "We're here, George. Here's all the money. We've got all our money back plus interest." And even the people that would come to arrest him, and even the movie, even they realised of how much people needed George and how good a person George is. They're like, they sort of tore up the warrant, tore it up, don't need it. They started donating money. It just goes to show, the more people you help in your local area, when you need it the most, they will be there for you. You know, again, it's that thing of, get rid of your ego, get rid of sort of like me, I. Service to others. If you want to live a happy life, service to others, because I tell you what, it will come back to you in tenfold. Not just because I'm a big believer in karma, that if you do good things happen, but it's true. This whole idea of manifestation and karma and doing good things and spreading kindness and kindness coming back, it is true. And not just, and it happens here in this movie. Yes, I know it's a movie, but it happens in this movie. This movie is a good example of proof of, like, you help those around you. People will be there to help you. You live a good life, a wonderful life like George Bailey, and you'll always be happy. You'll always live a wonderful life. And I love that. I really do. And I think that's sort of the message that should be sort of should end really with this film, is the fact of, it's a wonderful life that we all live. But as I've mentioned in other episodes this Christmas, is the fact of, you've just got to find it. You've got to look for the positive. You know, that's one thing I feel like people should take into the new year, is the fact of, look for the positive, look for the good. You know, if you go all your life seeing only negativity, you will never ever see any good in anything. You know, and that's kind of the message I've been trying to send. I don't know if anybody's noticed. I hope people have noticed. But that's the message that I've been trying to send with Violent Night, with A Miracle on 34th Street, A Christmas Carol, It's a Wonderful Life. You know, I chose these movies specifically, not just because I wanted to talk about them, but also they have messages in them. And that's one of the wonderful things about Christmas. That's one of the things what I love about Christmas, is the fact of, the Christmas movies have messages, is the fact of, you've experienced a year. Now it's time to kind of reflect. That's what Christmas is. It's the end of the year. It's time to reflect on how you decided to spend this year. Did you spend it good? Did you spend it bad? Did you spend it in service of others? Did you spend it in service of self? Was you there for friends? Was you there for loved ones? You know, these sort of things. It's that time of reflection. That's why Christmas movies, I feel like, are so beloved and magical, because people just come together, sit around the fire, watch Christmas movies, and feel good, and just be like, yeah, I have a good year, or you know what, I didn't have a good year, but next year I'll do better. And that's the wonderful thing about humans, is the fact that we have so much power inside us, but a lot of us just don't know how to tap it or how to use it. But when you do, you become unstoppable. You become a removable force. And that's an incredible power that we all have. We just need to sort of use it. And again, it's that idea of that fact of, use that power to help others. Use that power to improve your life, others' lives, your friends' lives. If somebody needs help, be there for them. Like I've said many times, what matters the most is time and effort. Putting in the time, putting in the effort, putting in the work for yourself and for other people, your life will get better. You know, I'm not a very negative person. The reason being is the fact of I try to see the good in everything. And maybe people could say, "Oh, well, that's very naive," but that's only because that's just the way the world is made. That's only the way the world is at the moment. That's the way society shows that you have to be negative in order to get attention. But I disagree with that, wholeheartedly. Was the fact of I would rather be naive and see the good in everything and believe in Christmas and believe in Santa and believe all these things than to live a miserable, boring life. I want to live, sort of, pardon the pun, a wonderful life. So I choose to be there for others. I choose to work and to um, be there for other people. I love it, and it sort of I hold it in my heart, and it serves me well, and I try to spread it as much as possible. I try to spread joy and cheer, not just at Christmas, but all year round. And yeah, Christmas is a wonderful time of the year. We just need to learn to come together more, not just for Christmas, not just for New Year's, but every single day of the year. If we all of us, even if it's not every single one of us, if a good majority of us as a human race comes together and helps one another, is there for one another, and just spends the time talking and listening and donating our time and effort, I think the world would slowly start getting to a better place, but only if then. So again, I'm going to say it, but servitude for others. Get rid of your ego. That should be everybody's sort of goal for next year and for the years sort of moving on. Should be the fact of get rid of the ego, kill it, burn it with fire. And as soon as you release that ego, your life will be better. I promise you that. It will be so much better. It might not seem like it straight away, but when you start helping others, things will start coming to you what you want. And not to get preachy, but it's true, you know. Um, but yeah, I love Christmas, and I just wanted this month to really send that message out there of just love and time and effort and just spending time with people that matter, and just to have a wonderful Christmas, really. So hopefully people have noticed these things that I'm trying to say, these messages, because they are really, really important. They are. Um, and this film is just magical. So I'm glad I finally got around to it. Obviously, this is a sort of somewhat review of a movie, but at the same stage, it's also not. I'm sure there's other people out there who do a better job than me breaking down It's a Wonderful Life, because again, it's about 2 hours and 5 minutes like movie. It's a longish film. So I'm sure there's people out there who do a better job than me breaking this film down. But I just really wanted to kind of get that message out there is also that's what I'm trying to do. But yeah, overall thoughts, It's a Wonderful Life. It's magical, it's beautiful. And funny enough, as I was watching it, so again, I've seen it 3 times now, and I've watched them all in black and white. Now there is a colorized version. I think in the 1977 there was the first colorized version. Then in the 1980s there was a second colorized version, and then in 2012 or 2008, something like that, was the newer color version. Now, from what I can see from my research, is that the newer version, the 2001, is the superior one, and what fans say is the best colorized version of the movie. And it got me thinking, the fact, if I've seen this film in 3 times, maybe next Christmas I'll watch the color version just to see if it's any different. Because, like, again, watching black and white movies, they have such a tone to them. They have such a feel to a black and white film that watching a black and white movie in color, will that change it? Will it feel any different? Will it feel newer? Will it feel better? Will if it hit the emotional beats a lot more? I don't know, but I really want to watch the colorized versions of this movie now, because while I was doing my research, it's actually funny enough. The reason why there was colorized versions of this, even though a lot of fans, and I think James Stewart himself was against the colorized versions, the reason why they came out was the fact of that the movie came into the public domain. So because the movie came into public domain, studios could do their own versions of the films if they wanted. So they all decided to do colorized versions, which again I find really, really interesting. A bit of sort of movie history lore that I really, really love. But also the fact of what kind of surprised me was the fact of nobody decided to do a reboot. They all agreed of like, no, it's brilliant how it is. Not a single person was like, let's redo it. And I'm glad. I really don't want to. Like, if generally, if like whoever owns it, if it's like public domain, whoever sort of takes on the license decides to do something with it, I don't think I'd be interested. I think what makes this movie so good is the time setting and when it was made, the actors, everything about it is just perfect, and that it's one of them movies like Back to the Future that just doesn't need to be touched. It can be left alone, forever. And like fine wine, it just gets better with age. Again, that's just my thought on it. But yeah, talk about trivia. So I have got some trivia here for you all that I want to share because I love a bit of trivia. So for the scene that required Donna Reed to throw a rock through the window of the Granville house, director Franz Capra hired a marksman to shoot it out on cue. To everyone's amazement, Reed broke the window by himself. She had played baseball in high school and had a strong throwing arm. Also, as Uncle Billy drunkenly leaves the Bailey home, it sounds as if he stumbles into some trash cans on the sidewalk. In fact, a crew member dropped a large tray of props right after Thomas Mitchell went off screen. James Stewart began laughing, and Mitchell quickly improvised, "I'm all right, I'm okay." Director Frank Capra decided to use this take in the final cut and gave the stagehand a $10 bonus for improving the sound. I think I mentioned that one in the introduction, but it bears repeating again because it's brilliant. James Stewart was nervous about the phone kiss scene because it was his first on-screen kiss since his return to Hollywood after the war. Under director Frank Capra's watchful eye, Stewart filmed the scene in only one unrehearsed take, and it worked so well that part of the embrace was cut because it was too passionate to pass the censors. Obviously, because they were very prudish back then, so you couldn't show too much passion. It's almost like you can't show too much ankle. You show too much ankle, it's too graphic for younger audiences. She showed a bit of leg, bit of clavicle. That's it. We can't show it. Oh no, it's kind of funny how things have changed. But back then they were very sensitive, very very sensitive people. Anyway, while filming the scene in which George prays in the bar, James Stewart was so overcome that he began to sob. Frank Capra later reframed and blew up the shot because he wanted to catch that expression on Stewart's face. This was why the shot looks so grainy compared with the rest of the film, and that is the scene as to where he's really crying, where he's so overcome because of his experiences with PTSD and all the trauma that he was dealing with. That's that scene. The gym floor that opens in the middle to reveal the swimming pool underneath was filmed at Beverly Hills High School in Beverly Hills, California, and was real and is still in regular use today. The same gymnasium moving floor was used in a similar school dance scene in Whatever It Takes in 2000. 54 years later, the young man who opened the floor to the pool was Carl Alfalfa Switzler. In an uncredited role, he was one of the stars in the Our Gang Little Rascals series. I think it's kind of interesting because as I was seeing that scene, I thought that seems really dangerous because you've got this floor that opens up and then you've got this really deep floor, like deep pool underneath it. The fact of, that opens up and you fall down. If it doesn't open up all the way, you're going in, you're drowning. You've got no way to climb out. You know what I mean? So it seemed really, really dangerous. But again, it is what it is. But yeah, so that's all I've got in terms of trivia. Thank you very much for joining me for It's a Wonderful Life. Again, I do deeply apologize about being ill. I do try to make it a thing of like, if I don't feel very well, not to record because I've done it before and I've never really been overly happy with the overall sound quality and stuff like that. The best one I did, I think, Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, the Nicolas Cage movie. I did that while under the influence of COVID. And it kind of helped the review a bit because I was very tired and very wired and very manic like Nicolas Cage. So it somewhat helped it a bit. But I wouldn't want to do it again. So hopefully this episode is good. Hopefully you all like and enjoy it and that you understand what I was trying to say and there was not too many ums and ahs. Like I'll try to edit as much as sort of I can so things sort of flow a lot more easier, a lot better. But I just want to say, thank you to everybody who has supported me and been with me this year through Christmas and through the whole podcasting year. It's been an absolute pleasure and joy. After this, I'm going to take a bit of a break off, and there'll be one more surprise for New Year's, so look out for that one. And then I'll be back in January for my sort of yearly sort of wrap up of all the things that I've done in like my 4th year podcasting, talking about like the best episodes and stuff like that. So stick around, for that. If you're new, again, thank you. Make sure you go back and check all my other stuff that I've done this year and the years prior. Next year is my 5th year of doing podcasting. So next year is going to be a whole year of celebration and looking back and trying new things and inventing and having fun. So if that interests you, then, stick around and tell your friends and stuff like that. And follow me on Twitter at howdybeans_bod, and follow me on Spotify if you're not already. Subscribe on YouTube, like and comment and all that jazz. Follow me on TikTok. And so for the last time this Christmas season, have a very Merry Christmas. Have a very wonderful day. Have a very happy New Year. Thank you very much for listening. I've been your host, Luke the Elder Bean. You've been listening to the Howdy Beans podcast, and I'll see you all very soon. Merry Christmas.